Well, Roy Cohn deserved to be dead.
Hi, I'm Eric Sabri, your Wayne County Treasurer. If you're living in a home of a deceased family member and you're facing property tax foreclosure, the probate process can be helpful to you. If you file a probate petition and notify our office, the foreclosure proceedings will be halted during the probate process. Contact us at 313-224-5990 or email us at taxinfo@waynecounty.com. We're here to help.
All righty, we are here. Welcome to another episode of The Week That Was. We've got a little bit of a different crew. Saeed has a staff meeting over at Wayne State University. Nancy is absent. I can't remember why. We're waiting for Steve Fishman, but we've got a great panel here. We've got community activists, labor activists, Barb Ingalls. We've got former WXYZ investigative reporter, Jim Kiertzner, who is wearing a Puma wear. And we are both shoppers at Costco, where you want to get Puma wear, that's the place to get it.
There's no product placement.
Well, I just wonder, did Costco pay for that statement,
whatever it is.
Alan?
I'm sorry?
Did Costco pay for that statement?
Yes. Yeah, I can't pass up. If I see Puma wear, I'm like, okay. It's always like $19.
The price is right.
And then we have attorneys, Bill Seikaly and Joel Sklar. We're missing the other attorney at this point, but we've got, as usual, there's a lot of shit going on this week. Everything from the Middle East, Russia, here domestically. Trump is like sucking up every cycle on the media. Why don't we start, first of all, with, and the question is, does it matter? The Democrats are, the favorability continues to drop at record lows. What is that temporary? Does it matter? Is it kind of mind-boggling? Since I mean, are people just seeing the Democrats as inept, that they aren't able to push back? Any Barb?
I think they're completely, as the British would say, gobsmacked, and none of them know what to do. They need to pull them up and start to fight, because it does matter. It matters a lot. And there's you're seeing rallies, and you're seeing people at town halls, and actual American people are furious, and they're frightened, and they're showing up, and they're starting to show up in large numbers, and the leadership is almost completely absent. And there's a few exceptions. You're starting to see a little bit, but if they don't get it together, if they don't start talking and fighting back, because this is blatantly a shot to tear our country down, and we need them to get up there, and we need them to start talking, and we need them to not shut up.
Bill.
Yeah, it's not that I disagree with anything Barb said. I think it's true, but I think you got to go back a step further and ask, what is the problem with the Democratic leadership? And I think there are two fundamental issues. One is the Republicans have been far more effective with their messaging than the Democrats have. You know, I read this stuff and I'm offended as a lawyer, and I'm sure that Steve and Joel are too. They put out these messages. We can't have a single district court judge who can control the presidency. You know, they're not the elected officials. The president is. Well, that's not the job of a judge. The messaging, it's just fundamentally flawed in terms of a civics lesson. The judge's job is to determine whether or not the president is following the law in what he's doing, based on what Congress passed. That's what they're doing, but the Republicans are much better at messaging on that. But I think that the more fundamental question is this: who and what are leaders? Unfortunately, for too long, in both parties, the Democrats especially, they wet their finger, put it up in the wind, try to figure out which way the people are going, and then try to jump in front of it. What we need are real leaders. What we need are leaders who say, this is what the country needs at this time. Here's my message, and if you believe me, follow me.
I think who are we as Democrats? How do we define ourselves anymore? Is Bernie Sanders really the standard bearer for the Democratic Party? Is he the guy that we should, not the guy, but his ideas, the way that he's approaching Trump, is that who we should be galvanizing behind? Who are we? I don't know who we are. I look at Chuck Schumer and I'm saying, that's my guy. I'm not sure that is my guy. So what do we stand for? What, other than saying we don't like Trump and we're going to save democracy, what else are the Democrats all about? So the Republicans communicate beautifully. They have simple messages for simple minds. Not such a bad idea. Democrats aren't brilliant either. We maybe should have simple messages for simple minds, but have messages that say why the Democrats, what we stand for, who we are, and what we can do.
I agree with you, Joel. I agree with you, Joel. But isn't this one of the great strengths historically of the Democratic Party? Is that we're a big tent. There is room for Bernie and Chuck Schumer. I mean, I'm mad at a particular vote that Chuck made, but I happen to be a supporter of Chuck Schumer. I'm probably a bigger supporter of Bernie Sanders on these particular issues. But we're a big tent. We've got room for these people. Should we be looking at the model that Trump uses? That there's only room for people who support Trump and nobody else?
His marketing strategy is genius. I mean, I hate Mitch McConnell, but he said you've got to win in order to have policy implemented. Well, you do got to win, and the question is, okay, who are we? How do we fucking win? I don't see anybody talk about how we win. What do we do to convince people that Trump's a danger and the Democrats are really your friends? We're not Marxists, not communists, we're not radical leftists. We're just people who want good things for others.
I think you just made my point. We've got the Democratic Party and not the Republican Party, but the Democratic Party and Trump. And we don't have a leader. We don't have a Barack Obama. We don't have a leader that people really want to
galvanize around. Yeah.
Maybe that's what we need to do before we do anything else.
I would love to see something.
We have a couple right now. I think AOC is right now is close to a standard bearer. I think Jamie Raskin, who doesn't leave DC, but I think these people are going on the road are doing a really good job. But I mean, how can we dismantle the Department of Education and have nobody from the party stand up and go, this is the basis of American democracy, is educating every single child in this country. How can we shut down? How can we talk about shutting down the libraries and the museums? Again, giving every human in this country access to education and to our culture. How can we? And there's been like whimpers. There's people in the streets screaming and yelling, but there is nobody that has to. And I want to know that too. Tim Walz is doing a good job, but Chuck Schumer.
Barb, Chuck
Schumer has to step back and step down.
Any of those people you just named, and I agree, they are all amongst the leadership.
Mm-hmm.
Can you see any of them being elected president of the United States?
I think Tim Walz could be president. I think Pete Buttigieg could get elected president. And I think he's ready to step up, because every time he gets in front of the camera, he is on point and he's solid and he shuts down their arguments and he's very good at it. If we get that far.
You overlook whether we can have a gay president, and that's a question. I think it's a legitimate question.
Yeah, I think it is too.
Jim Kiertzner.
A couple of things. First, let me say on the record that I've heard a couple of you guys say we in the context of the Democrats and the Democratic Party. I'm independent. I want to establish that up front. Okay. Bill, you know me well enough.
And I worry that you lean the other way, but that's okay, Jim. I love you anyhow.
I have leaned both directions. So does that make me bipolitical? I don't know.
Bipolitical. There's a term I haven't used.
There you go. There's an old saying in politics: if you don't define yourself, you leave it open for the other side to define you. And I think that's what's going on here. The Democrats have been so dumbfounded with Trump that they're flat-footed, and they haven't been able to rise up and get past the whole Joe Biden fiasco of last year. I remember being on with Steve right after the just disastrous debate, and Steve said, "Take away the keys." They ran Kamala, and the voters decided that she wasn't ready for prime time. She had some of her own mistakes. So I don't want to go down that rabbit hole again and relive last year. I just think that, I'm not all. So let me just say this. I talked a little bit before we started this program. I'm watching the Trump show through the lens of who he is, what made him tick, what makes him tick, and who kind of shaped him and showed him the way as a young businessman in New York. And that's Roy Cohn. There's a movie out, you can stream it, called The Apprentice, like his old TV show. You can see the relationship that they had. And Roy Cohn taught him attack, attack, attack. Deny, deny, deny. Everything is a win. And there's no such thing as bad news. Tell me that isn't what Trump is guiding, using that to guide him now.
Scary. Fishman, what do you have any thoughts on the Democratic Party?
Age. It's always my favorite one. I keep on beating that horse for how many years? I'm tired of old people. I saw Schumer. I don't know if you guys already said this. I watched him on MSNBC with Nicole Wallace. He was on for almost the entire, with Chris Hayes. Almost the entire show, Wednesday night, maybe Tuesday night. And, he's talking, and when he talks more, and he actually was being conversational, yeah, you can go, yeah. But he's old. He's 74 years old. All these guys are old. They're old men. And, right. And the women, too. Some of our senators, 78, 74. We need young people. That's what we need. Because who are we kidding? People our age, at least my age, what do we really know about people in their 20s?
Nothing.
Our kids are older than that. The kids, if you have grandkids, they're little ones, right? So we don't know shit about what the young people want. And we just need people. That's why AOC, I love her just because she talks to people who are her age and around in that group. And that's where the votes are, it seems to me. So that's all I can say. My number one thing, I want young people. I'm tired of old people.
I have a question. I have a video here of Elon Musk, who apparently was very pissed at Jimmy Kimmel enough that he issued a statement calling Kimmel a jerk after seeing this.
Tesla is a peaceful company. We've never done anything harmful. I've never done anything harmful. I've only done productive things. So I think we just have a deranged, there's some kind of mental illness thing going on here, because this doesn't make any sense.
Well, let me see if I can explain it for you. When you pull out a chainsaw to celebrate firing thousands of people, they get mad. It's just
And here, when we talk about, when we talk about having a strong Democrat, here's the opposite here of the Republicans. We have the adulation that is infinite.
Trying to get his attention and win his love. There are a lot of them. There are hundreds, maybe even thousands, but only 5 of them honored His Majesty so parasitically this week, they earned a nomination for the coveted title of Golden Groveler. Laura Trump.
When history looks back on this time in America, I do believe that it will be Donald Trump and Elon Musk who were reflected as 2 of the saviors of this country and really of the entire world.
Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick.
You can't tackle Donald Trump. He is the most important, the smartest, the most capable leader in the world, and he's not going to let someone push him around.
Attorney General Pam Bondi.
We all work for the greatest president in the history of our country.
Extraordinary tongue work this week, but only one can win, and the Golden Groveler goes to Laura Trump.
Here it is. We see so much promotion of this guy. We don't have anyone in the Democratic Party who anyone is getting even halfway behind and saying what an amazing leader. what do you say about that?
I'm saying this in front of some reporters, is the news the reality? You know, and again, I think if you talk to people, if you look at the numbers, more people are falling away from him. Maybe not on the Republican side, because I don't think those people have any fucking brains anyways anymore. But I think people are turning out in person, and I think that people are mad. I think that Trump won by such a tiny margin of the popular vote, and we keep forgetting that because he sucks up all of the news, he sucks up all of the information
by design.
We are completely addicted to him on the news, and I'm not sure that reflects, and I think that you can see that in the way that numbers are dropping, that people are leaving newspapers, because that doesn't reflect it either. People cannot get off Donald Trump, and in the meantime, actual Americans are, and I don't mean that as an insult. Let me rephrase that. People out there that are not in the news media are terrified, and they're so afraid of losing everything that they've been working for their entire life. Young people have no opportunities. Old people are afraid that all of everything that they've saved for is going to be gone. And Jimmy Kimmel is very funny. I'm not sure how helpful that is.
How helpful? You know what? I see it as, you know, particularly back in the day with Al Franken before he was senator, I feel like the comedians on TV are probably the strongest voices for the Democrats at this point. They're the ones who are standing up. They're the ones who are mocking, who are shouting out, pointing out things where we're not seeing. I mean, one of the problems right now, and I talked to somebody fairly prominent in Washington who wants to keep a look, and we were talking about the need for the media to step up, for, you know, the former presidents to step up. And this person is like, I want to lay low. I don't want to get on Trump's radar, so I'm trying to be quiet. And so do we need more people? I mean, people are blaming the former presidents for, you know, they're taking away the aid for AIDS in Africa, which was established by George W. Bush. We're not hearing anything from him. We're not really hearing anything from Obama, from Clinton, from Hillary Clinton. Are people afraid, or do they? Is it out of deference to the presidency? Bill.
Yeah, I think you cannot underestimate the fact that we've got Trump as president of the United States, and the president of the United States is the most powerful person in the world. Let me give you an example. I'm involved with a number of charitable organizations, all of whom are reducing their DEI information online. And the reason they're doing it is because most of them have somewhere between 20 and 60% of their funding coming from some federal contract or federal source. And the fact of the matter is he's cutting money to educational institutions for supporting DEI. So some of it is, how do you fight this person? And we keep on talking about Trump versus all Democrats. We need somebody who can stand in the ring and fight with him. And we need to figure out who that is and get behind him. And it can't be a bunch of people. I mean, it just doesn't work that way.
And who do you think that might be?
You know, I think that's less important than picking one. Go ahead, Steve.
Barb hit it on the head. The only person I've seen amongst the Democrats, although Chris Murphy does a good job when he's on TV, is Pete. Pete's the only one who's able to carry out what we're all talking about. If you guys have seen him on Fox News dealing with a Fox News audience and that kind of stuff. But the problem is, I happen to agree with you, Al. I don't believe. I mean, we can't get a woman elected, a gay person. I don't know how that's going to happen. But he's the best spokesperson we have, as far as I'm concerned. I hate the fact that he's sitting up there in Traverse or wherever it is in Michigan. I wish he was on television every day, all day.
Yeah. I
I
agree.
think he is running for president, though.
Yeah, he's been great. Jim, what do you
Oh,
say?
yes.
I agree too. I mean, I'm sitting here thinking Bill doesn't want to put out a name, but where's Jack Kennedy when we need him? Somebody has to silence their phone.
He's turning over in his grave because of what one of his nephews is doing.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
Yeah, we need the standard bearer for the Democratic Party, and who is it?
Somebody will emerge when there's a void. Somebody will emerge. We just have to create that void, and people are not willing to leave their positions. Like Schumer, just step fucking away. It is time. There's a new guard coming. You're the old guard. You got to go. It's the best for you. It's best for the nation. It's best for the party. People cling to, it drives me insane to see guys like this, like when Allen did it, when Schumer does it, to cling to power like this is disturbing to see. It's like saying a great athlete keep playing.
There's
Like,
a problem. We can't move up. I mean, in the ideal world, we'd move up the primary, and so we could get somebody out there early. I mean, I agree. We've got to have a vetting process. And Jim, I appreciate your comment. The reason I don't want to put out a name, and I've got 3 or 4 of them, is I want some process to go on so we can all get behind somebody. The problem with picking a candidate in a primary is, and I saw this when Bernie ran against Hillary. My wife was a Hillary supporter, and I was a Bernie supporter, and somebody had the good sense to invite us to all the debates that they had together. And one of the guys said, "I knew eventually you'd go along with your wife and support Hillary." But there were a lot of Bernie supporters who couldn't get behind Hillary. They just couldn't do it. It's what happens when we have divisive and ugly primaries. I think there's a number of potential candidates. Unfortunately, so far, they're gay and women, and that's an electability issue at the general election. But I think that we need to do something to get somebody out there. And I don't know who the next John Kennedy is. I don't know what this country is ready for. I mean, part of the problem, and this kind of group needs to wake up and look at it. The country's really running to the right. I don't know why. I'm terrified about why. But the country's really running to the right. And that is something that I think we have to acknowledge and figure out how to do it.
Yeah, go ahead, Jim.
To that point, I think the urgency for a Democratic Party leader is intensified because I think we're watching this Trump-esque show play out, but I think something is coming, and I could not predict what, but something is coming with Trump that's going to be a tipping point that people are going to go, wait a minute. Oh, okay. And there's going to be an Oprah aha moment. Trump's going to do something, and it's not necessarily going to be the Department of Education that he's doing this week.
It's likely to be a violation of the court's orders.
Well, yes, but then he's gonna package that up just like he did his criminal charges. It's an activist judge. It's a corrupt judicial system.
I'm sorry, Jim. Let me rephrase that. I think that the tipping point is likely to be when the Supreme Court of the United States rules against him.
And we saw that with John Roberts saying, wait a minute, we don't impeach judges who give you bad rulings. There's an appeals process.
Right. And look, I mean, even this Supreme Court is having trouble with a lot of these arguments. I think it's a question of which of these cases get up there first. And I haven't created a chart yet on what cases where. But if the 14th Amendment issue on birthright citizenship comes up first, I think that he's definitely going to lose that one. I think that the closing of the Department of Education, a president does not have the authority to close a department that was created by Congress.
Doesn't he have the votes in Congress?
Well, he might, but you know what? You got to use them. And the answer to your question, Jim, is no, because of the 60 votes necessary in the Senate to break a filibuster, He probably doesn't have the votes to do it in Congress. But, if it was really that easy, tell me why he wouldn't use the Congress. This goes back to Barb's point. He doesn't have this majority. And if you listen to Trump, the people elected me to do this. God damn it, I don't have to follow due process. I can gather up these people I think are criminals and put them on a plane. That's not what this country's about. And, it's not about if you're the president, you're functionally the king, and you don't have to listen to anybody else.
I think it's going to be, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
It's going to be Social Security. It's going to be Social Security and Medicare that gets people going. The veterans, going after veterans was a really bad idea, and that's what got a lot of those people to the town halls. But if they do, if they do pull Social Security, and I know it's mostly old people, but it's
a lot of old people.
And this is the thing, is that this is handicapped people. I hate to use that word. I don't even know what the right word is for it, but it's children. It's like it's widows. It's
people. It's not just old people. It's a bunch of young people. Because I was in this spot with my mom. It's a bunch of younger people who are going to end up having to take care of those older people.
Yes.
When Social Security.
It's going to empty out. It's going to empty out senior citizen homes, medical facilities when Medicare goes, and that is. And is it going to be too late? But I think that's what it's going to be. And these people, Trump and Musk have no. I mean, Musk goes on about that empathy is the problem in America. He doesn't give a single solitary fuck about anybody but his rich pals and himself. And I think that is going to be his downfall. Steve, I hope it's going to be his downfall.
Steve and then Jim. Steve, you got to unmute yourself. There you go.
So I agree 100% that the only way we're going to see pushback, we've said this many times on the show, is when it's Social Security, Medicare, things that affect a whole large number of people. And then if you tie that with, if the Democrats would be a little louder about it, it'd be nice. You tie that with, they're going to do that to regular people. Then they're going to reward all the billionaires and the rich people with a tax cut, which I'm not good at all the trillions that they say. But I mean, that to me is when it's going to grab people and say, wait a minute, this is starting to screw me up. And look what they're doing for themselves. And maybe then we get somewhere.
Jim.
I think the Democratic Party is queued up to be in the position of, we are the I told you so. The day of reckoning has come. And what could be the tipping point? I was reading this week, his cuts to the EPA could bring about another Flint water crisis. How tragic would that be?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, why don't we take a break real quick, and we'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Eric Sabri, your Wayne County Treasurer. If you're living in the home of a deceased family member and you're facing property tax foreclosure, the probate process can be helpful to you. If you file a probate petition and notify our office, the foreclosure proceedings will be halted during the probate process. Contact us at 313-224-5990 or email us at taxinfo@waynecounty.com. We're here to help.
All right, we are back. Let me go. We're going to do something about the DEI thing. I just want to DEI thing, and then we're going to go to John James running for governor. But first of all, on the Pentagon webpage, they took down Jackie Robinson. They took down the Tuskegee Airman. And then they were like, oh, oops, that was a mistake. But they caught so much shit. And then there's a bill that's the federal government no longer explicitly prohibits contractors from having segregated restaurants, waiting rooms. And they say it's more symbolic. There's federal and state laws there. But what do we make of the DEI thing? I mean, it's like the white supremacist dream of just sanitizing. Anybody?
That's what it is. It's whitewashing of history. I mean, you're renaming the forts for the traitors, for generals that for the South. I mean, it's just whitewashing history. Literally, it's revisionist time. We did it with January 6th. That's what Trump's doing. We're just rewriting history. It's Orwellian. That's what it is.
When white men are running everything again, how wonderful it will be.
Well, it's just a perversion of truth, and that is going to have an effect, an impact.
Fishman.
I think that one of the most important things for everybody is education, but education in the way that we were educated, not where it's selective education. For instance, you don't even discuss the subject of slavery when you're dealing with American history, which the country's built on slavery, and you're going to ignore it as part of your history lesson. The thing that people have to remember, I think, is that as generations pass, and the Holocaust is a perfect example of it, as generations passed and nobody who was around that was participating in it or they had personal knowledge of it, and it keeps going and going and going, it's very simple. This is what they hope for with this so-called getting rid of DEI. They hope that people will accept, oh, the United States, slavery, there was never any slavery in the United States. The Holocaust, that didn't exist. The Nazis weren't that bad, just like you're hearing from a guy like Musk. And I think that that's the biggest danger now, is that people aren't getting the full education that we all got when we were in school, and particularly about history, because history is, what's the famous line? If you don't learn it, you're going to repeat it or whatever it was.
Right.
So that's my biggest fear is the way in which, and not to mention, by the way, there was no Fox News when we grew up either. So, we were actually getting probably pretty real news. We're not getting that anymore either.
Bill.
Yeah, I agree with everything Steve said. I think that, but I think that to strip the veneer off what they're doing with DEI, they like to say, oh, we just want equality. That's why we're throwing the South African ambassador out, is that they don't like white people and we don't want people to discriminate against anybody. Everybody who believes that, please raise their hand. But I think that what's obvious about this is they're going after people like Colin Powell. Now, look, the only argument that anyone could ever make that Colin Powell was a DEI hire is that his face is black, his skin is black. I mean, there is no argument. In fact, anybody who really understands what people who did these firsts were, the first woman to do many things, the first black to do something, is they had to be better than the best. They had to be way better than the white guy in those positions.
Yeah.
And so when you go back in history and strip out these people who were the first to do this and the first to do that, that is clear racism. It's trying to whitewash, and intending to use that term, the history books, as Steve talked about. There is no other argument for it, because if you wanted to make sure that you were acknowledging the best, how the hell would you ever go after Colin Powell?
Right.
Yep. So anybody want to add anything before we move on?
When the Republicans talk about DEI, there's a presumption that whoever is included or got an opportunity to that is inferior and not capable, and that's not true. Right, DEI does not equal that presumption. DEI is an avenue for people who never had access to have access. If you can't pass the test, you're still not going to be an air traffic controller. And so it bothers the hell out of me that there is this presumption that you're doing people a favor because they're less than you. They're not able. They are able. They just don't have the opportunity because of what they look like, because they don't have disability, because they're female or some other characteristic that they can't change.
This is clearly rewarding the Proud Boys and such groups for their support of Trump. I don't think you can make an argument for anything else.
Yeah.
Well, it's particularly odd when you have people complaining about DEI like Donald Trump, who never got anywhere other than because of his background and because of his father and all that kind of stuff. And this guy's talking about he wants to be on a level competition field. The guy couldn't have made his 8th grade softball team, on his own. Everything he's done in his whole life has been given to him. So,
Yeah. So, all right, we're going to move on to John James, and Deadline Detroit wrote a story quoting a Republican source is saying that John James is already getting his people together. He's hired people to put together a campaign for governor. There was a poll that we ran in Deadline Detroit with a 3-way race between Jocelyn Benson, John James, and Mike Duggan. Benson scored like in the 40s. John James had 30%, and I think Duggan only had like 22%. Is John James a viable candidate? He barely won the first race he ran for Congress in 2022. He outspent Carl Malingo 5-1, and he won a razor thin. This time he won by a little bit more, but he's still not that popular of a congressman. Can he win for governor, Steve?
I have a question for Jim. Who wins in the primary between Mike Cox and John James?
That's a good question. John James, who? I live in his district. I'm in Macomb County. I'm in his district.
What do you think? I mean, Cox has he was Attorney General.
Yeah, he has good name recognition. Former AG. I don't. Ari Nesbitt, isn't he in this race too as a Republican?
Yep.
I know the answer, Steve. I guarantee the answer. Whoever gets Trump's endorsement.
Yeah. Yep. It's because it's the MAGA party now. It's not the Republican Party. It's the MAGA party.
But it's also Michigan Republicans.
I think Steve raises an excellent point. I think Cox would likely win, which would make the race interesting. But a couple of points. One, from everything I hear and everything I've read, Betsy DeVos is clearly behind this. If that's true, that means that there are inroads into Trump. And if Trump backs John James, he will be the nominee, and I think that realistically, the only way that John James wins the gubernatorial race is if both Benson and Duggan stay in as an independent. I make the assumption that Benson's going to win instead of Gilchrist, but I could be wrong. I don't think so. But if it's a Democratic nominee and Duggan, that creates the avenue for him, John James, to get in. But I also think it's going to be critically important because remember that all these statewide seats, the Attorney General, the Secretary of State, the gubernatorial race, are all open. All of those candidates, it's got to be like when Gretsch and Jocelyn Benson and Dana Nessel came in. They've all got to be strong candidates. They've got to run a strong race, and they've got to do it in a united front.
And do we see Dana Nessel as having any future beyond the Attorney General? I mean, there's a Senate race in 2026. Steve, what do you say about Dana Nessel?
I'd be astounded if she has a political future past the AG. I don't know. Again, I defer to someone like Jim. You guys are a little more political than me, but I'd be astounded, honest to God. I really would.
Yeah, I don't know that she's certainly not articulated any future plans. Nothing I'm hearing behind the scenes. So she's a big question mark. Is all I can say.
Yeah. She's a fine attorney, and I think she's been a good attorney general. But I think that she is not a classic politician. I mean, she got to the attorney general's position because of her work as an attorney. And look, I've met her a couple of times, but I don't really know her. I've heard nothing about her aspirations to go into Congress and she doesn't seem the type, to be honest with you.
Jim,
I'm just smiling because Bill, when you say that, I was working in her campaign slogan when she first ran was, "I'm the only candidate without a penis."
Mm-hmm. That got my vote. I think she lost a lot. She lost a lot of the young people's vote because of her rulings on the Palestinian demonstrations at U of M. I think that was a bad move for her. But we'll see, because I think people know good and well what the what's going to happen if she doesn't. I also want to say that Mike Rogers was backed by Betsy DeVos, right?
Yeah, I'm sure.
John James, I mean, can anybody think of anything he's ever said except for that stupid commercial where he was shooting terrorists?
Yeah.
I mean, John James is like a completely empty. He's an empty suit. We say that every week. They're gonna have to give him something to say. And I'm not sure if that's gonna work at all.
But if he gets Trump's support, you're going to see the Roger Stones of the world come in and just run it for him.
Yep.
He's still,
By the way, I'm not sure. I hate to
empty
say this,
person.
Barb, but I'm not sure that him being an empty suit and not having said anything isn't one of his strengths. He gets to say anything he wants, right? He doesn't have a record to run against.
Right.
I mean, I've heard him say, I've read quotes about anti-Trump things that he said. I've heard all kinds of things that he's said.
That didn't hurt J.D. Vance.
Right. Yeah.
And what John James said didn't compare to what J.D. Vance said.
Whoever it is.
Well, I think what's happening is that he is telling people that he's going to get Trump's endorsement, from what I hear. Yeah, I think he's expecting it. And I guess the question is, what has he done as a Congress member that would make him stand out in any way? He ran I think his district is split between Oakland and Macomb.
Macomb.
And he has a address in Shelley Township, but there's questions whether he really ever lived there.
No, he was a carpetbagger. He moved over here to run.
He's just always been. I mean, when he ran for U.S. Senate, he had a big billboard on 8 Mile and Woodward that said, John James, born and raised in Detroit. Well, he lived in Palmer Woods till I think 9th grade. Then he went to Southfield, then went to Brother Rice High School. I mean, there's a feeling of disingenuousness there that he's just doing he's being a politician, I guess, but even more so, you don't get a sense of who he is. I think his identity, I don't think he knows who he is.
I don't think he worries about it.
Yeah, but I think, and then the question is, we've talked about this a little bit before, Garland Gilchrist, people say, oh, he deserves it or whatever. But, I learned at the Washington Post, I had an editor who kept applying for these jobs. And she said, I deserve it. I've paid my dues. And I'd say, you know what? They don't give a shit. They care about, are you going to make them look good? They don't care. And I think the voters in this case are not going to be like, oh, we owe it to Gilchrist. He's been the lieutenant governor. I do think that, we've talked about this. I think Gretchen Whitmer should have put herself out and just said, this is my guy. He's run with me as a running mate for 2 terms. I should endorse him, knowing that there's a good chance he's not going to win, but showing some form of loyalty. And I know Bill may have a difference of opinion on that. Bill?
No, I think that it's not that I have a great difference of opinion on it. I think it's very clear that Gretch is running for president. And this is kind of a sacrosanct rule amongst most politicians, is that when you're running, you don't endorse downhill or down ticket. Trump has bucked that successfully, but I think that Gretchen's staying out of the endorsement game, and I think it's a tried and true technique because she doesn't want to offend anybody.
I do think it's interesting. I talked to friends. I talked to a friend in Maryland who's very in the know, used to work for Dick Gephardt. Talked to another friend from Portland who used to live here in Detroit. And they just all have gushing things to say about our governor. And I sort of sense sometimes her national reputation is better than her reputation here in Michigan. Does anyone get that sense?
Yep, absolutely.
Isn't that true for everybody? I mean, aren't you always better out of state than you are in your own state? I mean, I think it was true I think it was true for Barack Obama. I think it was true for Cuomo when he was in New York. I mean, I think that that's not an unusual statement to make. It's not that Gretchen's unpopular in this state.
Right.
I think she comes across, she's great looking, she's really articulate. She was able to weather that whole, they were gonna kidnap her and put him in the middle of Lake Michigan and leave her there, and she survived that. I mean, I think that she does. I think, like, I supported Abdul El-Sayed for governor when he ran, mostly because I thought she was a completely corporate Democrat. And I don't think I was wrong. She stepped up to the plate when we met her in the state of Michigan. And I think that that's the thing that everyone is going to remember, is how well we ended up weathering this. She, going to see Trump and kissing his ring a little bit. I don't think that was a super good look, but she's a centrist Democrat. That's what she's going to do. We'll see if that's going to win an election for her.
Was she anybody made a very smart move during State of the Union or State of the State when she talked about young white men not feeling like they had a place at the table?
Yep.
Was anybody surprised that there wasn't more news that came out of that when she went to see Trump? And I watched that and I thought, to me, she missed a good opportunity there.
I think, I think maybe some of his skepticism, my feeling is, look, Mitt Romney trashed in the 2016 campaign, just trashed Trump. And then he came crawling to him he wanted the Secretary of State job. And Trump paraded him into the Trump Towers and welcomed him. And then basically said, fuck you, buddy. You got to be kidding me. You think I'm going to fucking hire you? And I sort of feel that's with Gretchen Whitmer. It's like, oh, yeah, you called me a piece of shit. Well, yeah, come on over. Yeah, you think I'm going to help you? Fuck you. I think people are skeptical that Trump is really going to be. I mean, they know how vindictive.
Romney did have it coming, though.
Fishman.
Well, I ask this question all the time. All the things you guys just said, particularly about Gretchen and then about Mitt Romney. How do people keep falling for this? Have people never met somebody like Trump? They have. The problem is they've met him on playgrounds. They met him in jails because they're the criminal that you're interviewing before you go to court. They don't recognize what the guy is. How many times have I said this on this thing? For people to give him the opportunity to do what he did to Romney is just so typical of him. And he's doing it right now. Look at all the crazy stuff and taking away the security details and all these things. The guy never forgets. He's Roy Cohn is exactly, and he was a criminal as well, remember. Roy Cohn was a criminal, just like Trump and his dad. These are criminals, and they have criminal minds. And that's what I always talk about here. And
I completely agree with Steve. Completely. He's a mob boss.
Yeah. I have one thing I want to play is a little video, a snippet of Charlie LaDuff, who was railing really on behalf of Trump about the Canadian tariffs. And I have a friend who is living in the U.S. from Canada, and he goes, it's just a false narrative that Canada's screwing us. Canada's the biggest importer of American goods in the world, like $26 billion a year in American goods. But here's Charlie trying to prove our everything, which is true, everything we have almost in the States comes from somewhere else.
On your back, bro. My hat is made in a USA, 100% beaver pelt. But the coat, made in China. Sweater, Bangladesh, bro. The American flag boots, ironically, hecho in Mexico. Blue jeans, Pakistan. My undies, Vietnam, bro. So remember, there's the price of stuff, but there's also the price of labor. And in Detroit, we've been getting shafted for 3 decades with these unfair trade deals.
Why, Alan? Why?
Only because Nancy's not here. I could.
Yeah, I'm here.
Nancy would be like, "Oh no!" And in matter of fact, I'm going to do this because of Nancy's absence.
Who ate all the gabagool?
No more gabagool for you. The doctor said it's bad for you.
I don't give a.
Anyways, all right.
Such a douchebag.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
are you talking about Alan or?
No, I love Alan. He knows it.
I mean, he just played those. He just played those 2 clips. I almost sent you a text saying, "Please don't." I mean, I read your story. I saw it. I love your coverage, but I would not have played that.
Yeah.
Look at. you are talking about two very different things. He's talking about it is true that Canada and a lot of countries put protective tariffs on products to try and protect their industry. What impact does that have? It has the impact of increasing the cost of those goods for the Canadian residents. They decide to do it for policy reasons to protect an industry.
Mm-hmm.
They're not doing it to punish the United States. That and you can make the argument about whether they do it. Trump's tariffs are completely different. They're and they're sold differently. I mean, at least when Canada does it, they're not saying we're trying to raise revenue. What they're trying to do is keep these products out of their country.
Right. Yeah, and like I say, they're the biggest importer of goods, of American goods in the world. They do have, I don't know, it's 150% tariff on chicken and 250% tariff on cheese, but it's like they don't need our cheese. They don't need our eggs. They don't even have an egg problem that we seem to have here. So
they still have science there.
Yes, they have science, but so it's people don't understand. It's unfortunate. I mean, Charlie's a very bright guy, but I think in that instance, he's taking Trump's side 100%, saying we're getting screwed, when what Trump is doing to Canada is going to cause a recession in Canada and eventually a recession here. So there's no thought to it.
Cause a recession here before it causes a recession in Canada.
Yeah, and it's all personal. Like, you did what? Well, fuck you. I'm gonna double R, and it's just all. It's not. The policies that we have in the U.S. are not. With Russia and stuff like that. They aren't the U.S. policies. They're Trump's personal policies that are being carried out by stooges in his administration. But anyways, let's go to the final episode or section or whatever segment. That was the word I was looking for
Downtown Detroit, Robert Wells, Schmuck of the Week.
Okay, let's go with Steve Fishman first. Steve, you got a Schmuck of the Week? All right, I think is he frozen, or here we go. We got
there you go.
Whoops. Let's try it again. All right, Fish. Whoops.
What are you doing?
All right.
He's muted. There he is.
Here we go.
It's his technology.
Yeah, mine is Tom Holman is my Schmuck of the Week. Not just for his regular everyday being a complete asshole, but the fact that he was willing to join in and chime in on Trump's thing when he told federal judges, we don't give a crap what you say. We're going to do whatever we want, and who the hell are you to tell us what to do? That, to me, is a very significant problem we're going to have in this country, and he's the mouthpiece for it right behind the orange queer. And so he's my Schmuck of the Week. He probably wins every day anyway, just the job that he's doing. But that business about telling federal judges to go screw themselves was a little too much for me.
Yep. All righty. Bill.
It's tough. I'm not going to steal yours, Jim, though it was mine. I have a toss-up. One, it would be Congressman Tim Walberg from Michigan, who famously said we shouldn't give a dime to Gaza in a private session, in a private town hall. He loves holding private town halls,
right?
And said we shouldn't give a dime for humanitarian purposes in Gaza. We ought to do what we did in Hiroshima. He said that last month, but this month he was invited to attend a town hall sponsored in his own district, and guess what? Didn't show up. I wonder why.
Shocking.
And my other is to Steve Bannon, who on Andrew Cuomo's show said he has come out and publicly endorsed Trump in the next presidential election. Very scary.
You endorsed who?
Trump.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Trump. That they are working on a plan to deal with this little term problem that is in the Constitution.
Okay, Joel.
One, I'm a little bit upset with Hunter Dickinson to come through for me. Kansas game last night, a little bit bummed out. But my schmuck is going to be it's going to be the Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick for shilling Teslas. I don't know what your Commerce Secretary is doing, trying to promote car sales for a private entity. That's kind of unorthodox. It really doesn't serve much of a governmental purpose. It's bizarre, but he's and that's a schmuck. I mean, how low can we go? Much lower, but it's pretty low. So he is my schmuck.
All righty, Barb.
We have a riches of schmucks right now, but I'm gonna go back to Chuck Schumer, who in his towering tone deafness was about to go on a book tour, promoting his book, and he was going to charge money to go to his events too. Most people go, they have book tours, and you sign up and you go and you stand in the line, but not Chuck Schumer. And it probably hurt him to cancel it, but he was going to go, and thank God everybody saw what he was doing. But really quickly, I'm also going to add Tom Homan. Is that how you say his stupid?
Yes, that was
fucking head like a thumb name. He claims he's just not going to let the law stop them from getting as many brown people out of this country as they can, and beige people, and some white people while they're at it. And he's not going to let them stop. And he's like the screaming, red-faced face of that.
Huge bulbous head. Yes.
Really looks like a big thumb.
And Mr. Kiertzner.
Okay. As of yesterday, former Minnesota GOP State Senator Justin Eichhorn, he resigned yesterday. I'll get to the payoff of that in a second. But first, he and fellow Republican state senators in Minnesota introduced the Trump Derangement Syndrome Bill, which means an acute onset of paranoia in otherwise normal persons in reactions to the policies and presidencies of President Donald J. Trump. Symptoms may include Trump-induced general hysteria, which produces an inability to distinguish between legitimate policy differences and signs of psychotic pathology, verbal expressions of intense hostility toward President Trump, overt acts of aggression and violence against anyone supporting President Donald Trump. And here's the payoff for former state Senator Eichhorn. He was caught up in a Chris Hansen type sex sting where local law enforcement officials are alleging that he was online with who he thought was a 17-year-old girl. Turns out to be the police posing as same. He's now facing charges. He resigned yesterday. Karma's a bitch.
All righty. And I am the last one here. I'm going to go with Stephen Miller, who is echoing this craziness of, why should a judge have any say over presidential powers? A judge in this small little district, which happens to be one of the most important districts in the country. But it's just so the fascism that is going on. I mean, it's just frightening, and that's where we all have to speak up, because. And some people go, "Oh, you're overreacting. The sky's not falling." But it's like it's like when COVID came and Trump early on turned to Fauci and said, "We're going to be done with this by Easter, right? People are going to be able to go to church," and just minimizing what is happening. I mean, the fact they take down the Jackie Robinson thing on the website. What does it take? How many hits on the head with the hammer does it take before you go, that hurts, something's happening? And so I think it's frightening. And Stephen Miller is just one of the really scary for Jewish who really has Nazi qualities, is really.
And I think he is the grandparents I thought were Holocaust survivors too. I thought there was actually it's a little bit richer. Right. The guy, is not well. I mean, if you met him, you would know instantly when you were talking to the guy that he ain't all there. He's frenetic, is my guess. This guy's got some, he is a scary man, but he reminds me of Roy Cohen. He has extremist policies that are nuts, and that Trump does listen to him, man. It's terrible. It's terrifying.
Molly Ivan said that his speech would have sounded better in the original German.
Yeah, I mean, it's just terrifying.
One of the really scary things about Miller is that, you know, anybody who knows anything about the law knows that this issue of whether or not a judge can make these decisions was decided very early on in our government and in our history, and it's just offensive that anybody. Miller's not an attorney, is he? I mean, I don't know how you can ignore Marbury versus Madison.
Right.
You know, it's just it's one of the foundational cases. But anybody who should be talking to this guy should say to him, you can't say stuff like that. It's just not accurate.
He's not controllable.
Right.
He's not.
He really
Well, Trump, actually, he's probably gaining points with Trump.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Fishman. Did you want to say anything? All right. I guess not. All right.
Well, what? Impressed that I said Marbury versus Madison.
That's a nice
he threw me for a loop with it. He starts talking constitutional law. It's a long time ago when Sklar and I went to law school, so those kinds of things.
40 years, my God, it's going to be in May. Oh, God, that's terrifying. Somebody help me. Okay.
Okay. Well, everybody, thanks so much. We've got a big game tonight, Michigan State at 10 o'clock, and I think Michigan is playing on Saturday, I believe.
5-something, I heard, yes.
Great game. Great game.
Great weekend.
Yeah.
I'm going to see Burton Cummings.
Oh,
Anybody still have
At the music hall.
Oh, wow. Burton Cummings. Guess who?
That's not bad. I used to wake up to he had like a great tune in the 70s. I was at camp. It would be on the alarm at the same time it would come on. It was in Canada. And he's Canadian, correct? Isn't he? Or something like that?
Yes, he is.
And so we'd come on, like we'd wake up to whatever that damn song was that was huge, like in 72 or 73.
Yep.
Just
all right.
Anybody still have a bracket intact?
I don't.
No, but my bracket's doing okay.
Are you in a bracket, Bill?
I am, but it's not intact. I mean,
Okay. I mean, March Madness is such a great distraction in the sort of the final tail end of winter. But
hey, man,
actually, my secretary is doing better than I am, and she made some decisions based on the emblem. Like she went with Clemson because of the paw. Go figure.
That's a good.
Anyways, Barb Ingalls, thanks so much. Jim Kiertzner, it's great seeing you. And
thank you.
Puma Power.
You got it.
Bill Seikaly, Joel Sklar, and Mr. Fishman, who's already back to work.
Exited stage left. Yes.
Yeah. Everybody have a great weekend and drive home safely.